My name is Elena Carter, and I was 34 years old the morning my sister suggested I should disappear from her perfect pictures. Not metaphorically, not politely, literally disappear. Apparently, a wheelchair didn't fit the aesthetic she had spent months obsessing over. Funny thing about cruelty, it rarely arrives quietly. It bursts into the room like a thunderclap, and when it does, it usually reveals truths people have been hiding for years. I've been living in this wheelchair for 7 years now. 7 years since a drunk driver slammed into my Honda Civic on a rainy October night outside Portland. 7 years since doctors told me that the spinal damage was permanent. 7 years since I had to rebuild the life I thought I understood. At first, it felt like trying to assemble a 1,000-piece puzzle in complete darkness. But piece by piece, I figured it out. I built a quiet, stable life. I work from home as a graphic designer, which means most days are spent in front of glowing monitors, sipping too much coffee while creating logos and marketing layouts for clients I'll probably never meet in person. My apartment sits on the 8th floor of a brick building downtown. It's small but cozy. The windows face west, and every evening the sky turns a deep orange over the Willamette River. I've learned to love that view. I have friends who see Atlanta first, wheelchair second. And I have someone else in my life, too. Daniel Brooks. Daniel is the kind of man people describe as quietly good. The sort who remembers how you take your coffee after hearing it once. Who notices when your smile looks a little forced. He doesn't hover or pity me. He just treats me like a person. That might sound simple, but trust me, it's rarer than people think. Then there's my older sister, Vanessa Carter. If my life runs on calm routines and quiet victories, Vanessa's runs on spotlight and applause. Where I'm thoughtful, she's impulsive. Where I try to keep things grounded, she treats life like a stage performance, and she expects everyone around her to play supporting roles. Growing up, she always had that energy. Teachers adored her. Strangers admired her confidence. But living with Vanessa meant understanding that the universe revolved around whatever story she wanted to tell about herself. 8 months ago, she started planning the biggest event of her life. Not a wedding exactly, though honestly, it might as well have been. Vanessa called it the celebration of her new chapter. In reality, it was a massive countryside gathering at the Thompson Barn outside Nashville, with nearly 200 guests, professional photographers, live music, and decorations that look like they've been ripped straight out of a Pinterest board. Rustic barn chic, burlap runners, sage green ribbons, mason jar centerpieces, soft acoustic guitar music. She talked about it constantly. Every family dinner turned into a design meeting. Every phone call turned into a breakdown of flower arrangements. It has to be perfect, she said one afternoon while scrolling through inspiration photos on her laptop. Her eyes had that intense sparkle she got when she believed the world was about to admire something she'd created. Every detail needs to match. The lighting, the colors, the atmosphere. When people walk in, I want them to feel like they stepped into a dream. I watched her from across the kitchen island. Sometimes I wondered if Vanessa ever got tired of chasing perfection. Then something unexpected happened. She asked me to be included in the family photos. At first, I thought I had misheard her. Really? I asked quietly. For a moment, my voice betrayed something I rarely showed. Hope. Because growing up, Vanessa had always preferred when I stayed in the background. Before the accident, she had called me boring. After the accident, she called me fragile. Of course, she replied quickly. You're my sister. The words sounded correct, but something about the way she said them felt rehearsed. Still, I wanted to believe her. Maybe we had finally grown past the rivalry. Maybe she finally saw me as more than the broken sister. Maybe this time she actually wanted me there. A week later, she invited me over for coffee. The moment I rolled into her immaculate living room, I noticed the expression on her face. It was the same one she'd worn countless times growing up. The one that meant she was about to ask for something she knew I wouldn't like. I need to discuss something delicate, Vanessa said. She perched on the edge of her white leather sofa, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her dress. You know how important the visual theme of this event is. A slow knot formed in my stomach. Okay. She leaned forward slightly. Everything needs to blend together. Romantic, natural, picture perfect. The way she looked at me made my skin crawl. Then she said it. "Do you think you could maybe not use your wheelchair during the photos?" For a second, I thought I had misheard. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "What?" "Well," she waved her hand vaguely. "Maybe you could stand for a few minutes, or sit toward the back where the chair won't be visible." My fingers tightened around the armrests. "Vanessa," I said carefully, "I can't walk." She sighed like I was the difficult one. "I know that, but the chair is just so distracting. It throws off the whole aesthetic." The words hit harder than any slap. "You're asking me to hide." "It's not personal," she said quickly. "You probably wouldn't understand how important it is for everything to look perfect." Her eyes flicked down to the wheelchair. "Especially since you're single." That was the moment something inside my chest cracked. Because what she really meant was simple. In her version of the story, I didn't belong in the picture. I left her house that evening with tears blurring the road in front of me. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't tell our parents. I locked the conversation away like a poisonous secret. But I made a decision before I even reached my apartment building. I was going to show up, exactly as I was, because I deserve to exist in family photographs. I deserve to occupy space in the world without apologizing for it. So on the morning of Vanessa's perfect celebration, I dressed carefully, applied my makeup slowly, and rolled out the door, determined to face whatever came next. What I didn't know yet was that before the night ended, my sister's perfect day would collapse in front of 180 stunned guests, and nothing in our family would ever be the same again. The morning of Vanessa's celebration arrived with the kind of bright, clear sunshine that photographers dream about. Golden light spilled across the Tennessee hills surrounding the Thompson barn, turning the fields into soft waves of amber. It was the kind of day that felt too perfect to belong to real life. Unfortunately, perfect days have a way of revealing the ugliest truths. My body ached more than usual that morning. Stress does that to me. Every shift in my wheelchair sent small flashes of pain along my spine, like distant lightning under the skin. Still, I moved slowly and carefully through my apartment, determined not to let it show. If Vanessa was going to cause a scene about my presence, I was going to look composed while she did it. The dress I chose was soft sage green, the exact color she had insisted all family members wear for the photographs. The fabric draped elegantly over my lap, and when I finished my makeup, I studied my reflection for a long moment. For once, I didn't see the wheelchair first. I saw myself. And that was enough. When Daniel arrived to drive me to the venue, he smiled the moment he saw me. "Wow," he said softly, leaning against the doorframe. "You look incredible." His voice carried that quiet sincerity that always disarmed me. "Thank you," I replied. He stepped closer, brushing a stray strand of hair behind my ear. "Are you sure you want to go today?" he asked gently. The question wasn't judgmental. It was protective. I knew Daniel had sensed something strange in my mood all week. He just hadn't pushed. "I have to," I said, because running would mean admitting Vanessa was right, and I wasn't ready to disappear from my own family's story. The Thompson barn appeared like something out of a magazine as we drove up the gravel road. White wooden fences stretched across green fields, and the barn itself had been transformed into a rustic fairy tale. Soft ribbons of gauzy fabric hung from the rafters. Mason jars filled with wildflowers lined the walkways, and rows of wooden chairs faced a floral arch beneath the open barn doors. Even I had to admit it was beautiful. Guests milled around outside, holding champagne glasses, laughing and greeting one another as soft acoustic guitar music floated through the air. For a moment, I almost believed the day might go smoothly. Daniel helped me out of the car and walked beside me as I rolled toward the entrance. Some guests smiled warmly. Others glanced at my wheelchair, their expressions flickering briefly before they forced polite smiles. I'd seen that look many times before. It was the look people give when they don't know where to place someone like me in their version of normal. Inside the barn, sunlight streamed through tall wooden beams, creating glowing streaks of gold across the floor. Everything smelled faintly of roses and fresh wood. Vanessa had spared no expense. Before the ceremony portion of the event could begin, she had insisted the photographer take the family photos first. I want that golden hour lighting, she had announced during planning. And I refused to cry during pictures. Makeup first, emotions later. So everyone gathered near the floral arch. Parents, cousins, aunts, and uncles. The photographer adjusted his lens while calling out instructions. All right, everyone closer together. Let's fill the frame. I positioned myself near the edge of the group, careful not to block anyone. Still visible, but not intrusive. Exactly the compromise Vanessa had always demanded my entire life. For a moment, everything felt calm. Then Vanessa turned around and saw me. Her smile vanished instantly. 1 second, she looked like the radiant host of a perfect event. The next second, her entire body went rigid. Her eyes dropped straight to my wheelchair, then snapped back to my face. I could almost hear the calculations happening in her mind. Her cheeks flushed bright red. "What the hell are you doing here?" Her voice cut through the barn like shattered glass. The photographer froze. Every guest turned toward us. I felt heat rush into my face, but forced my voice to remain steady. "Showing up for my sister's celebration," I said. "How could I miss it?" Vanessa's eyes widened with disbelief. "You think this is funny?" Her voice grew louder with every word. "That chair is hideous. It ruins the entire aesthetic. Do you have any idea how long I spent designing this event?" Guests shifted awkwardly. Someone coughed. But Vanessa kept going. "It destroys the photos," she snapped. "It completely kills the vibe." I swallowed the knot forming in my throat. "Vanessa, please don't do this here." But she wasn't finished. In fact, she looked like she had been waiting for this moment. "You're being incredibly selfish right now," she continued, her voice echoing across the barn. "This day is supposed to be about me." Her finger pointed directly at my wheelchair. "You're stealing attention." The words landed like stones. "Can't you disappear for once?" she demanded. "Just for one day?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My parents stood frozen near the back. They looked stunned. "Vanessa, do you have any idea how embarrassing this is for me? You sit there like some charity case everyone has to pity." My heart pounded in my ears. But the worst words were still coming. "You're a burden," she said. "You're pathetic." The barn had gone completely silent. Even the acoustic guitarist had stopped playing. Then Vanessa grabbed my arm, hard. Her manicured nails dug into my skin as she tried to pull my wheelchair backward. "Get out. You're ruining everything." Pain shot through my shoulder. "Vanessa, stop," I cried. "You're hurting me." And that was when Daniel stepped forward. I hadn't even realized he had moved. One moment he was standing behind me. The next moment he was between us. "Stop." His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the entire room. Vanessa froze. So did everyone else. Daniel looked at her slowly. His expression was calm, but beneath that calm was something dangerous. "Do you hear yourself right now?" he asked quietly. "She's your sister." Vanessa opened her mouth. "The photos." "No," Daniel said. His voice remained steady. "You're screaming at a woman in a wheelchair because she exists." Vanessa's face twisted. "You don't understand the theme." "I understand perfectly." Daniel stepped back slightly, his shoulders straight. "You think she's ruining your perfect event?" His eyes hardened. "No, Vanessa." "You are." Gasps rippled through the guests. Vanessa looked stunned, like the world had suddenly betrayed her. "Daniel," she sputtered, "this isn't about you. It became about me the moment you decided cruelty was acceptable." He shook his head slowly. "I won't stand next to someone who humiliates her own sister like this." My breath caught. Vanessa laughed nervously. "Don't be ridiculous. We worked for months planning this." Daniel's voice turned colder. "Exactly." He stepped away from her. And then he said the words that shattered the entire afternoon. "I can't be part of this." The barn fell into stunned silence. Vanessa blinked rapidly. "What do you mean?" Daniel didn't raise his voice, but every person in the room heard him clearly. "I mean, I won't support someone who treats family like this." He turned away from her and walked toward the barn doors, just like that. No shouting. No dramatic speech, just quiet certainty. Behind him, Vanessa's voice rose into a scream. "Daniel, you can't just leave." But he didn't stop. The barn doors swung open. Sunlight flooded inside, and he walked straight out, leaving behind 180 stunned guests and a sister whose perfect day had just collapsed in front of everyone she wanted to impress. For a few seconds after Daniel walked out of the barn, no one moved. The silence was so heavy it felt like the air itself had thickened. I could hear the distant sound of wind brushing across the fields outside and the faint creaking of old wooden beams above us. Somewhere near the entrance, a champagne glass clinked softly against another as someone's hand trembled. Then the whispers began, soft at first, like the low hum of bees waking inside a hive. Did that really just happen? Oh my God. Did you hear what she said to her sister? Every murmur felt like another crack spreading through Vanessa's perfect event. She stood frozen in the center of the barn, still wearing that carefully chosen dress, her hair pinned into the elegant style she had spent hours perfecting. But the mask had fallen. The polished, glamorous host everyone admired minutes earlier was gone. In her place stood someone furious, humiliated, and completely exposed. "Daniel!" she shouted again, rushing toward the barn doors. But he was already gone. All that remained was the bright rectangle of sunlight where he had disappeared. Vanessa spun around, her eyes wild. "Why is everyone just standing there?" she demanded. Her voice was shrill now, desperate. "Someone go get him!" No one moved. Not the photographer, not the guests, not even our parents. My mother stood near the back row of chairs, her hand covering her mouth. My father's expression was blank with shock, like he had just witnessed a car accident and couldn't process the wreckage yet. Vanessa's gaze finally snapped back to me, and for a moment, I thought she might start screaming again. Instead, she simply stared. The rage in her eyes was almost frightening. "This is your fault," she said quietly. The words were soft enough that only I could hear them. "You humiliated me." I felt something inside my chest tighten. "I didn't do anything," I replied. "You showed up in that chair," she snapped. Her voice rose again, drawing attention. "You knew exactly what that would do." A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs spread through the guests. Vanessa turned toward them, searching for support, but the expressions she found weren't sympathetic. They were uneasy. Some even looked disgusted. And suddenly, for the first time all afternoon, Vanessa seemed to realize something. The audience she had wanted so desperately had just watched her cruelty on full display. The photographer lowered his camera. "I think we're done here," he muttered awkwardly. Guests began shifting toward the exits, whispering among themselves as they slipped out of the barn. The carefully planned celebration was unraveling faster than anyone could stop it. Within minutes, the space that had been buzzing with excitement was nearly empty. Vanessa stood in the middle of the barn like a statue, surrounded by wilting flowers and abandoned champagne glasses. I sat in my wheelchair, still stunned, my emotions tangled together in ways I couldn't untangle. Humiliation, relief, shock, and somewhere beneath it all, a strange, quiet sense of validation. For once, someone had seen Vanessa clearly. 3 weeks passed before I heard from Daniel again. Those weeks were strange. Our parents called several times, trying to talk about what had happened, but every conversation ended awkwardly. Vanessa had apparently locked herself inside her house for days afterward. Then she began posting vague, passive-aggressive messages on Facebook. Quotes about betrayal, about fake family loyalty, about people who ruined special moments. She never mentioned me directly, but everyone knew exactly who she meant. One quiet Thursday evening, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. Daniel's name appeared on the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. After everything that had happened, I wasn't sure what either of us could possibly say. But eventually, I answered. "Hello?" His voice came through the line immediately. I moved out. No greeting. No hesitation. Just a statement. I blinked. "You moved out?" "Yeah." There was a pause before he continued. "I couldn't stay there." He was referring to the house he and Vanessa had purchased together earlier that year. A beautiful Victorian place in the Music Row neighborhood. They had spent months renovating it, planning parties, planning a future. "I kept thinking about what she said to you," he continued quietly. "And every time I walked through that house, I realized something." "What?" I asked softly. I had almost built my life with someone capable of that kind of cruelty. His voice hardened slightly. I can't ignore that. I didn't know how to respond. I'm sorry, I said finally. He exhaled. Don't be. Then his tone shifted, more determined. I'm selling the house. That surprised me. You are? Yes. He paused again. And when it sells, I want to do something with my half of the money. I frowned slightly. What do you mean? I want to give it to you. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Daniel, what? You heard me. His voice was steady. You deserve something good to come out of all that mess. My heart started racing. I can't accept that, I said immediately. That's your money. No, he replied firmly. It's money tied to a life I'm not living anymore. He continued before I could interrupt. You stood there in front of nearly 200 people and handled that humiliation with more dignity than most people would ever manage. His voice softened. You showed me what real strength looks like. I swallowed hard. I don't need a reward for that. This isn't a reward, he said. It's a choice. Silence stretched between us for several seconds. Then he added quietly, You're family to me, Elena. That simple sentence carried more weight than he probably realized. The house sold 4 months later. The final price was $420,000. Vanessa received her half, but the rest of her life looked very different now. Daniel had cut off contact entirely. Most of their mutual friends had distanced themselves after hearing what happened at the barn. The social circle Vanessa had carefully built around admiration and appearances had quietly evaporated. Meanwhile, a certified envelope arrived at my apartment one crisp autumn morning. Inside was a check large enough to change my entire future. It was enough to buy a fully accessible condo, enough to pay off my lingering medical bills, enough to give me a sense of stability I had never dared to imagine. Vanessa had tried to erase me from her perfect picture. Instead, the moment had erased something else entirely. Her illusion of perfection, and the world had seen the truth. The condo sits on the 7th floor of a quiet building overlooking the Cumberland River. Every morning, sunlight pours through the wide living room windows and turns the water below into shimmering silver. Some days the river looks calm and peaceful. Other days the wind ripples its surface like restless thoughts. I like watching it. It reminds me that life moves forward whether we're ready or not. The first time I rolled through the front door of this place, I cried. Not loud, dramatic sobs, just quiet tears sliding down my face as I looked around the empty rooms. For the first time since the accident 7 years ago, a home had been designed for someone like me. The hallway was wide enough for my wheelchair. The bathroom had a roll-in shower with smooth tile and stainless steel grab bars. The kitchen counters were slightly lower so I could reach everything without straining. Even the balcony door slid open effortlessly. Small details, but they felt like freedom. Daniel had refused to let me thank him too much. You didn't take anything from me, he told me during one of our phone calls. You gave me clarity. Still, I knew what he had done for me had changed my life. The move happened quietly a few weeks after the check arrived. My parents helped carry boxes upstairs while I directed them from my wheelchair. Neither of them mentioned Vanessa. Not once. That silence spoke louder than any conversation. As for my sister, her life had become strangely small. She moved into a cramped studio apartment across town after selling her share of the Victorian house. From what I heard through relatives, she spent most of her time online now, posting cryptic messages about betrayal, about people who pretend to care about family, but secretly sabotage everything. She never admitted what had happened. She never apologized. Instead, she treated the entire situation like a tragedy that had unfairly happened to her. But the truth had already spread. Several guests from that afternoon had quietly shared the story with others. And the internet has a way of amplifying moments people wish would disappear. The biggest irony of all? The photos. Vanessa had obsessed over those pictures for months. Every detail, every angle, every color. The photographer had started shooting test photos just before the confrontation exploded, which meant something unexpected had been captured. One particular photo circulated among family members weeks later. Someone eventually showed it to me. In the image, I'm sitting in my wheelchair near the edge of the frame. My chin is lifted slightly, my expression calm. Behind me, Vanessa stands mid-shout, her face twisted with rage. And just a few feet away, Daniel is turning his back, walking away from her, the entire moment frozen in a single frame. It's not the polished, romantic picture Vanessa imagined, but it tells the truth better than any staged photograph ever could. 6 months passed. Life slowly settled into a comfortable rhythm. I learned the quiet sounds of my new building, the hum of the elevator, the distant splash of boats on the river, the friendly nod from the barista at the coffee shop down the street, who always remembered my order. One afternoon in early spring, my phone buzzed again. Daniel. Coffee? He asked. Simple. Direct. I hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. We met at a small cafe with outdoor tables facing the Riverwalk. The weather was warm enough that people had started sitting outside again. Daniel looked different. Not physically exactly, but lighter somehow. Like someone who had stepped away from a storm and was finally breathing clear air. We talked for almost 2 hours that afternoon about everything, about how strange the past year had been, about how easily people hide their true selves until something forces the mask off. At one point, he stirred his coffee slowly and said, "You know, that day at the barn changed something for me." "How?" I asked. "It showed me the difference between appearance and character." He looked up at me then. "You handled that moment with more grace than anyone had the right to expect." I shrugged slightly. I was too shocked to react. "Maybe," he said with a faint smile, "but you still showed everyone who you really were." After that afternoon, we started meeting for coffee occasionally, not romantically. At least, not at first. We both needed time to heal from the wreckage Vanessa had left behind, but friendship grew easily between us, stronger with each conversation. Sometimes people ask if I feel guilty about how everything turned out. After all, Vanessa lost almost everything she thought she wanted. Her relationship, her reputation, the admiration she had carefully cultivated for years. The answer surprises people. I don't feel guilty. What I feel instead is clarity, because that day didn't destroy Vanessa's life. It revealed it. Cruelty doesn't suddenly appear out of nowhere. It simply waits for the moment someone stops pretending. As for me, every morning when sunlight fills my living room and glints off the river outside, I remember something important. Vanessa tried to erase me from her perfect picture, but in the end, she erased herself from mine. And honestly, that turned out to be the most beautiful outcome of all.